So just a brief, so welcome to the Sustainability Working Group. Just a brief summary on TC54 meeting that happened, was it yesterday or day before? I can't remember. This week, that happened this week. It was originally scheduled for, I think, the week prior, but we had to reschedule due to holidays and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, Samina was not able to attend. Samina being the Secretary General of ECMA, she was not able to attend. So while we did review the proposal for TG4, I didn't want to go ahead with a vote without somebody officially from ECMA present. So I will wait for her to join the next scheduled TC54 call to actually do the vote to officially kick that off. But obviously, you know, um, that doesn't stop our work in the community going forward. So just wanted to provide a quick update on that.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate it. Have you had any feedback on like scope or concerns or no?
No, not at all.
All
In
right,
fact,
then we'll just
everyone I've talked to essentially is really, really excited about this and just wants it done and deployed already because they want to use it.
yeah,
Um,
that's good.
yeah.
All right, so there's a need for us. Let's hope the formalities get handled soonish.
Yep.
All right, Mark, do you have any specific thoughts and wishes for today, or should we just proceed?
Just proceed.
All right, let's see what we can do.
Sorry, I just got paranoid that my microphone might be turned off, but it wasn't.
All right, let's see if I can. I'm now not in my usual place, so I have to try to make everything work on my tiny little computer screen, which makes everything much more difficult than usually. Let's see if I can share a screen with you guys. No, wait, there's something weird going on here. There we have it. Okay, let's see. Share. Okay. Sorry about this. Yeah, I just upgraded Zoom, so everything is different today. Call. No, for some reason it only wants to share my Slack or the desktop. None of the windows. It's kind of weird. Okay, let's see. Can you see anything here?
Just a kind of gray shaded thing.
Gray shaded. That I guess doesn't sound correct. Let's stop this. Maybe Steve, can you share this the document? So instead of me having to struggle with this. This is not my regular computer, so this is my travel computer, and I haven't apparently not everything working here. Any luck? Steve, your mic is muted.
Sorry, I was sitting here talking to myself.
I do that all the time.
Well, you don't answer back, I guess.
Well, I get my cat usually answers.
All right. So,
My flatmate's cat. All right. Awesome.
where do we?
Yeah, I think we had come to the U13.
13?
The Roman showed up last time, if I remember correctly, and we had a little discussion around U12.
Right.
That was specific to the Cyber Resilience Act and the new ideas there for an open source software steward. So I've been mulling around, and Roman gave some good comments to that discussion, and he proposed that we split this up into several use cases. It's describing one of the scenarios that the project could go through, and his examples were an as-is project, like as you find them today, nothing around it. It's a hobby, or we don't say anything whether or not it's intended for commercial use, or whether or not there is. He proposed also having a scenario where the project is offering commercial services. I don't know if that is in scope here.
Interesting, but I don't know.
Yeah, and whether or not there is a paid version available, and they can call themselves a manufacturer. That's also an interesting case, but the moment you are actually earning profit, or you market it as such with the intention to make a profit, then yeah, then you're a manufacturer. But at that point, you have completely different requirements from the Cyber Resilience Act. You have to put a CE mark on your software and link to your certificate of compliance, and which compliance authority has certified this, and a bunch of extra documentation and that stuff. So that's at that point like you're running a business. At which point I think that we're out of scope for what we're doing with this file here and what we're doing here.
What about when somebody is offering sort of paid for services, but it's not you, and you, the project, might not even know about them? I would possibly, a kind of example is a dependency track, where somebody's like sort of running it as a service and you pay for it, but there's no relationship at all between the two projects. They don't contribute back. And the thing is that they could make all sorts of kind of statements, which is completely independent of what statements would be needed to be made for the open source project known as dependency track. Isn't that correct, Steve, as an example?
It's an example, but I don't think we need to account for the fact that we don't know things, right? What I think we need to account for is the ability to tie this file format and provide a way to for end users to validate, to verify that this is from the authoritative upstream project source, right? This is the authoritative statement that is tied to a specific deliverable. I think that would be really useful.
Yeah.
So two things. Is there any value at all in including sort of like a use case where you're actually saying there will be cases where there's uncertainty and that's not a problem?
Well, I think what we can do in the spec is that we can tie it to, like, if we use Perl without a version, for example, we could tie it to the thing. And, the absence of, we need to figure out the absence of a statement. Keep in mind, this is about sustainability. This is not about like life cycle.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. I'm wondering if we are going down a rabbit hole here.
yeah,
If we are,
Well, first and foremost, the purpose of this thing here, the file here, what we're doing is to be able to communicate things that are necessary to communicate regarding what is needed by the project. Not provided, needed. But there are some gray areas around here because, say, for example, you might have a steward organization, which means you're still open source, but you say that you are living up to a little bit of a higher set of requirements around security specifically. That makes this project suitable for use in a commercial environment. Which is, you still need the help, and it's still an open source project, but you have a little bit of extra stuff going on, and you might get some support, like funding or something, through the steward organization, for example. But it's not a commercial project. It's just like an open source project with a steward. Which is, I think, well within the scope that we've set out for this document here. But the moment we are talking about an open source project that has a commercial side to it, either whether or not it is connected directly or not, it's kind of a new game at that point. And you could say that as a commercial software, or a commercial open source project, which there are lots of examples of, you're still interested in different types of support, like what we're talking about here. Like I would love to have somebody who can help me design a new logo or whatever. Which makes me a little bit like I'm here a little bit unsure because having a commercial backing or a way to fund the work is usually a fantastic situation for an open source project. You can make a living out of it, and at that point, that group of use or that use case or those types of use cases, I'm thinking those are not where it hurts today. Those are, in a sense, the successful open source projects out there. They have enough of users so that they can actually run a business on it, enough customers. Is this a channel for communicating that kind of related information, like this file here? I'm unsure right now.
I don't
I don't
think
have a
so.
strong opinion though.
I mean, we could certainly boil the ocean and do like a knowledge graph of everything that we know about, a given project and how everything kind of relates to one another. But we go back to the, and I know this isn't going to be part of CycloneDX, but we go back to the guiding principles of CycloneDX. And let me just pull those up real quick because I think it's important. And number one on this thing is ease of adoption, a simple prescriptive approach that streamlines implementation and ensures immediate benefits. And again, we can boil the ocean, but that's going to introduce a certain amount of complexity and a ton of flexibility. And it's going to remove our ability to prescribe how people actually use it, which means you're going to get a lot of variance, which is not what we want.
Right.
In general, we try not to go for the perfect specification. We try to do specifications that are easy to understand, are easy to implement, and easy to adopt.
Yeah.
Um,
I have one question there, and that is, let's say if we now decide to drop stuff that has to do with the steward organization thing in the Cyber Resilience Act. I'm undecided on whether or not that is a good idea right
mhm.
now. Is there any existing ways in the CycloneDX to specify information like this that is relevant for that use case? Like that means right now we're talking about the following fields: a statement whether or not a project, or strictly speaking, maybe a release is intended for commercial activities, and if you have a steward, what steward it is. And the steward could be yourself or another entity or some foundation or whatever, or none if you're looking for something. And if you are operating, if you're an open source project that is monetizing it, like meaning you are selling support or hosting or customer features or something like that, then you have to act as a manufacturer, which means there's a bunch of extra metadata that are required for manufacturers, like the certificate of conformance, the CE mark, a bunch of documentation, and a link to the authority that certified you, or something like that.
Right.
Those need to be put somewhere in a project. Like that is metadata that needs to be placed somewhere. And right now, I don't know if there is a place for them within CycloneDX.
You can put some of that information in CycloneDX, but I don't know of any tools that's going to automatically do it, which is kind of the problem. So, like, if you
Yeah,
have, commercial activity, right, is kind of vague in the context of CRA. So, like, if you offer like support, you don't sell the thing, but maybe you offer support. Well, there's an
no,
external reference of type support. Um, and you could specify like the organization that you actually get support from.
yeah,
Um,
no. Just to throw in a little bit, the thing that is regarding the part of the Cyber Resilience Act that relates to commercial activity is actually really simple, and that it's a requirement that is, if the component in question is intended for commercial use, meaning that some commercial entity should be get some assurance from the author of the project that this is fine if you use it in a commercial. I made it in such a way that you can rely on this code.
yeah,
And it's just a claim, an intention. And together with that intention comes a bunch of implications. For example, that since it's intended for commercial use, that you are making yourself available in case something happens, like a vulnerability is discovered, that you reply in a reasonable time and stuff like that. And that you maybe have that you do perform due diligence on your code. Together with a steward and some other entity who pays for it. And there's actually nothing more to it. And the question
well, I
on
know, I
if you
know the
have
wording
other
is simple.
fundings, yeah,
I know the
but if you
wording
have,
is simple, but the lawyers are really debating that a lot. I
yeah,
hear that in my organization, and I hear
yeah,
that a lot in other commercial entities as well. Like, what is commercial? I mean, if you take something like dependency track, which is quite literally designed for enterprise scale and enterprise use,
yeah,
where does that fall? I have no
well,
idea.
that's up to the whoever runs that project gets to decide. That's as far as I care. Like if somebody says, yeah, sure, you can use this in an enterprise setting, then the answer to that question is yes. And that's it. It's the only thing that is meaningful here. And if you say no to it, it means that downstream the users of that project shouldn't expect anything. And that's why that's what the default is. But if you say yes, they can expect a little bit more around security stuff, specifically.
So to my understanding, it's not the project that actually does the assertion. It's the interpretation of the legislation, and that's going to be ultimately decided by the courts, not the maintainers.
No, no, no. Oh, if somebody is interpreting like that, that would be a problem. Oh, that would be a huge problem.
You would be surprised the number of people that are interpreting
Yeah,
like that.
but that means you're taking the decision of what the project is meant for out of the hands of the project owner.
Mhm.
And that's like no. You can do what you want with the project, but you don't get to decide the intentions of the project owner. That's the project owner's own decision. They get to tell what they intend. And if anybody comes and says, yeah, you intended this to be used in a commercial setting, then sure, you could make a claim like that, but the answer, the actual truth regarding this matter comes from the person who is in charge and that tells what this is for. And there's and if any anything else would be an imposition, that somebody imposes their will on another project. And holy crap, that every open source project out there who cares a little bit of their own code will say no fucking way.
Yes. So if with that in mind, then I think it would be very, very similar to how we have the taxonomy down here. I think it might behoove us to come up with a list of common commercial activities that the project could optionally assert that that's the intent, as well as the ability to assert no commercial activities. But
Do we,
what
do we
I,
really have to do that?
well, if you are saying that, it's the
But
projects that do it, then I think we need a way to automate that for them to actually
no,
declare
no,
that. How else are they
really
going to
don't.
declare it?
Well,
How are you going to declare it?
first of all, the default is no. We do. This is not intended for commercial use. This is by default you get it as is, and nothing has changed. The Cyber Resilience Act comes in and says the main manufacturers have certain duties, but they explicitly say the projects don't have any liability or duties at all. So we can keep as we go. So that means the maintainer or the owner of the project has to explicitly opt in to say, I'm
But
going to
how
leave
do
up
you
to
opt in?
by saying I'm opting in. And one way to do that is to say this project, this specific project, is intended for commercial activities. That's the language that is used in the Cyber Resilience Act. And just saying so is that now you know the intention. It's completely clear and black and white. And there's no discussion. And the person who is in the position to do that does so and has done so if it says so. The only
Right, but
maybe
I mean,
thing
where's the record of that though? That's kind of my point. Like, is it on social media? Is it on the project?
no,
Is it
that
on,
I would
something
say
else?
the record for this should be in a metadata field in the project. That's where you would expect it, right?
But there is no field for that today.
No, not today. That's why I think it is interesting to talk if that field should be included in this project.
Right,
But
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, but if it's not included here, then that's why it's important to figure out is the place for it somewhere else, like in the existing CycloneDX
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
spec somewhere, for example.
Yeah, you're not going to, well, I guess you could, but DX doesn't support that.
Yeah. No, that's
Um,
I would love to see that in 1.7, like because this is coming in any case, and the lawyers will be starting to look for, and the developers will start looking for that in a few months. Like, where should we put this? There's no way, no place to put it.
Hey,
Um,
Mark, can you do me a favor? Can you what I'm thinking here is I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but like on the metadata component, if there was a way to assert commercial intent and the types of commercial intent, commercial activities that might be available.
There's one comment there, by the way, around that. If you look at if it's an open source project, the usual criteria for it to be an open source project, like as in you have an OSI license, one of the criteria is that you can use it for anything you want, which implies that you cannot say that this sector is allowed to use it and this sector is not allowed to use it. Now, we're not talking about who's allowed to do something, but we are talking about who gets assurances, and that's like a softer version of being allowed to. It's like you get the extra support, or if you work in that sector for this type of business, I will respond quickly to vulnerability incidents. And if you work in one of the sectors that aren't listed in my list, then I will not respond quickly. I don't think that's a super useful road to go down. So I would say just intended for commercial use, and think of it in the same way as an open source project is intended, is usable for anything. And you could put it in a weapons system. You can have someone in Iran use open source in order to create atomic weapons. Who knows? Like, we don't know, and it's on purpose made such that we cannot make a decision. We should not make a decision. The most important part of it is the freedom to use it as you wish, and that sadly includes all the other stuff, all the things
Yeah,
that we
I
don't
think we're
like.
going to have to flesh this out a little bit, and we're going to have to account for legislations outside of the CRA that are likely going to introduce similar language but
Yeah,
different words.
that's
Um,
the one good way to make it, let's call it legislation compatible or
mhm.
interoperable, is by not going into details, and just talk about what is the intent, like the most high level general type of intent. So if another legislation talks about something with a different language, then you can still get the intent across, because it doesn't say anything detailed. The moment you talk about details, you're creating complexity where no complexity is actually needed. So, but
Not
yeah,
yet, anyway.
yeah, well, we should probably expect somebody will make problems, but we can punt it. We can say, let's wait with the taking, like caring about the future problems when we come to that bridge. Cross it then.
Yeah.
Right now, we have, strictly speaking, just one legislation that is real right now, and that's the European Union's. And
The one way to maybe do this then is to actually, you know what? I know a really simple way to do this.
yeah,
We could use CycloneDX attestations. We can provide a default standard for the CRA that has the requirement of, this product, commercial activities, and you could test to it, right? And the lack of attestation doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
But if you attest yes, then there's your answer.
yeah, yeah. No, we'll put it somewhere in that gets a point across that there is a steward, or and who it is, and the intention to make it clear so there's no questions about, is this intended for commercial activities? If the author says yes, then there's no discussion. We don't have to speculate. And wherever those two fields are located, I don't care. Like, I think this is a reasonable place to put it. If it can be in the CycloneDX, even better, I would personally prefer that, because that would mean this work here is simplified and we don't have to spend time on this. Oh, well, we have already spent time on this. And whatever happens in other legislations, as far as I know, what I've heard from people who are into the policy wonks out there, and those who are working on legislation, as far as I've heard, is everybody's looking to the European Union to see what they're doing,
Right.
and will be probably just copying whatever they do. And as long as they don't introduce new fancy stuff like the Indians are doing right now and the Germans,
Right.
then I think we'll be fine. And just like, I know we're a bit early maybe with this, and there's a lot of people out there who need to weigh in. But I think this is, like, if we do it simple, we have still the options to add this, and if we can simplify it and just two fields with a clear idea of what's going on, then I think we'll be fine. And in fact, I think we'll be helping people. And if it turns out we were mistaken, and then this could be fixed in the next version.
Sure.
And I'm
Okay.
pretty sure actually that's not the case necessary, because the idea of the steward is like they haven't spelled out like what the European Commission didn't ever spell out what they meant with the steward. They just put together a short list of requirements and a few promises, and then has told everybody to just, you figure it out what that means, and that means we can actually decide a little bit. We can say this is what we mean. And for me, I've been wringing my head around this thing here now for 2 years, and this is as simple as it can get, and it's still useful, and it achieves the goals of the Cyber Resilience Act, which is to increase the security of open source software, and it communicates the things that are necessary to communicate in order to make all of this work. So it's been our second discussion here on Cyber Resilience Act. Sorry.
No. I mean, it's important topic. So,
Yeah.
okay. Now let's continue on. We're done with 13. Done with
Yeah.
14.
Asking for here when it comes to co-maintainer, like I don't think we're completely done with the 13, because the idea of a co-maintainer is necessarily something you find everywhere. Sometimes you have a benevolent dictator for help with some lieutenants, the benevolent dictator for life, I mean, with some lieutenants that are helping. They could be called co-maintainers. Sometimes you have a core group that assists the benevolent dictator for life. Sometimes you don't have a benevolent dictator, but instead have a council of some sort, for example, that like a small group that meets and votes.
Yep.
And in any case, the question is, how do you communicate that you want a co-maintainer? The usage scenario I'm having in mind here is that if you have somebody who is actively participating in the work as a user, doesn't have to be often, but fixes bugs now and then and comes with pull requests, that's awesome. That's a good candidate for a co-maintainer. They show that up themselves, but sometimes those kind of people don't show up, but you still have users, and at that point it might be maybe an idea to communicate downstream to your users that if there's somebody who knows this code and would be willing to help me a little bit, please step up. That's
Yeah, I don't think we can account for like every open source project. I mean, your basic ones are just going to have maintainers and, that's it. And your bigger ones will have different levels essentially. And, they'll call them by different things. We can't account for every single type of structure.
Oh, no, of course
So
not.
I think in this particular case, what we can do is we can, in terms of like a specification, I would love to be able to have the ability to specify that we need the additional maintainers. I don't know if we call them co-maintainers, but additional
That's why
maintainers.
that's probably better.
And I would like two things in addition to that. One, a description, a summary of what it specifically you're looking for. And two, the qualifications of, kind of that ideal type of thing that you would consider.
Yeah. So again, like dependency tracker is a good example of that, where you might want to have, when you say a co-maintainer, basically an additional body to do PR requests, reviews, so that every merged review, every merged PR has had 2 reviews. Whereas at the moment, some PRs actually get merged without any review. And then that would be a mark of an sort of, over time, by the addition of a co-maintainer, an increase in the quality of a project.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a very specific type of, subset of what a maintainer might do.
Yeah. I think we have several words we could use, I think. But what I'm having in mind a little bit here is not somebody to take over the project, the responsibility, but somebody who helps.
Yes.
And I don't know if a co-maintainer is a good word. It's the word we're using in my community, but it could be that's not the right one. So are there any better or more neutral terms we could use that communicate that we're looking for a type of maintainer that isn't the one responsible, but is still like a core contributor type of level of maintainer?
Well, I think there might be a distinction between maintainers and leaders. Like even if you look at like the GitHub permissions, right? The maintainer permissions are not all permissions. They're just necessary to sustain the project. They don't have admin rights over the thing. That's really reserved for the project leads, the leaders.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good example. So there's things I can actually do in GitHub repos. But when, for instance, I want to, create a new milestone or a new label, I can't do it because of the permissions model doesn't allow me. But the thing is that what I can do is useful stuff, and it's that sort of contribution that might be sought under U13.
Yeah.
But In this way, description becomes really useful. And then when version 1 of the sustainability sort of comes out, it will either sort of make a lot of people very happy, or people will come back and say, well, U113 it doesn't go far enough, or then it can be extended.
Yeah.
Right.
In my other documentation that I've been writing for the CIPA security group, I've tried to distinguish maintainers from project leadership by having two separate roles of leadership. One is the owner, and the second one is the author. And I'm saying defining the author as the first maintainer, the one that created the project in a sense. And the owner would be the entity that has the copyright ownership, for example, or decides the licensing, which might be a business.
Right.
Many situations, I would say the author and the owner is the same person. But when it comes to what kind of decisions they get to make, it's good to have those roles clearly separated. But in this case, would it make sense to say that when we talk about the project leadership, or the person in charge, the benevolent dictator for life, for example, could we use the word author for that person, or should we use owner? Or should we keep calling them maintainer as we have right now, and then say that anybody helps them is a different type of maintainer, for example, a co-maintainer?
Well, I think owner is kind of universal across a lot of different platforms. You look at like all of the various you look at all the various ecosystems like PyPy and all these other ones, and they usually use the term owner in a lot of cases. I think GitHub also uses that term, if I remember right. So that one's kind of universal.
Right.
The author might be confusing because that could literally be anyone. Like as a person who contributes like a grammatical change could theoretically be an author.
Yeah. Yeah, I like I have thought the author could be a nice word, because when you publish something, you do something that authors do.
Right.
I publish your software, but I do get it that the term author is used in so many situations that it kind of creates confusion. I do see that.
Yeah, like even in
Mm.
like the Maven Palm, there's a way to provide, I think, authors, but really most people use it as just a list of contributors, of major contributors.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm. Let's make a decision. I propose, if it's okay with you guys, if it sounds okay, that we just change the word maintainer to the word project owner wherever we use it. Or if it says project maintainer, we say project owner.
okay, so you're looking for that level of
Like, who gets to decide is the question here, and the maintainer gets to decide a bunch of things. A contributor gets to decide less.
right,
An owner gets to decide the most, or is
r-
probably the benevolent dictator for life,
right.
or the business who started this project.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
maintainers still there, but okay, because with if we just use the word owner, that solves the possible confusion when it comes to looking for additional maintainers. That means we
Sure.
don't care if it's a co-maintainer or a maintainer. It's still a type of maintainer,
Yep.
and that means if we do that, then let's just call it a project owner as a specific role, and we can use capitalized words to say this is a specific role. That would mean just the question here is, well, I want additional maintainers and having just a field that says I want help. On cPan, there's a mechanism where you create a co-maintainer and a helper. The top level owner on cPan is called a maintainer. They have something called first come status or something like that. And they can set the co-maintainer to a special user called need help. And that means please come and help. That's the way it works there. And having something similar in the file, I think would be fine.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay? Does that sound okay?
I think so. I think that makes sense.
Okay. And I suggest we just take it as it is and add a nice little icon to it that is green.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that is a lot less ambiguous. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Next point. Let's see. We have a couple more left minutes left here. Open source meetup community needs help organizing events. So the idea here is that some open source communities out there, they have dedicated meetup communities. In the Perl cPan Raku world, they're called the Perl Mongers. You can see their website on pm.org with a map of known Perl Monger groups and what kind of activity they have and where to meet them. And usually they either meet for a beer now and then or organize technical meetups where we talk about the interesting new software or geek out or whatever. But so that's a useful contribution and a type of activity which is incredibly beneficial for the open source communities that manage to organize something like that.
I was just saying, absolutely. It can suck up a lot of hours.
Yes.
Which means so the project owner doesn't have enough hours. It's a very focused kind of activity that you need help with.
And it's also a regional thing, or while the project owner of one project I have in mind, for example, would be Modulicious. The owner lives in Nuremberg in Germany. He can't organize stuff like that, but there are others who can organize meetups, and they might want help themselves. And being able to communicate that project, like let's say call it a meetup website is created, where you can drop a sustainability YAML file or something like that, or JSON file, where it says, hey, this community here needs help organizing meetups.
But sorry, because this is the first time I've attended a meeting, this is basically an example of something where, like, the duration or the lifespan of the populating of like U14 might be a couple of weeks. In other words, you say, I need help organizing events. Somebody steps forward. Now you no longer need help organizing events, and the value goes from like yes to no. Correct?
Yeah. But it's not just okay, maybe we should make it clearer that what we're not looking for is help for an event, but help with being an organizer.
Yes. But the point is,
it's a role that the one needs to be a volunteer that is needed.
Sure, but once you've filled the role, you no longer have the need.
Yeah, my experience with that
Sorry,
is that you will have a need soon
you
enough.
you no longer need to recruit
Yeah,
to fill the need.
yeah, yeah. The meetup groups. I've organized events like this like for 20 years ish, and if somebody steps up and says, "Can I help? I have something in mind," and then you say yes, and telling people we want that there is always room for somebody to step up. I think, like strictly speaking, it's always a yes there, as far as I'm concerned. The moment you don't need any more help, that's a fantastic situation to be in. But yeah, sure, it could happen. Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about this particular one where it's a very focused need, where you either need help organizing events. It's got nothing to do with having additional maintainers or whatever. It's very kind of like sort of granular. But then, do you perhaps want to have something where you can actually make a declaration that you've actually got a resource that takes care of organizing events, so that you don't get somebody asking arbitrary questions? Oh, do you need help with this? Because they can see that you actually in this particular area, you don't. You've got
Yeah.
somebody.
We kind of already have some granularity in the Appendix 1 here, because the use case here is, strictly speaking, not a project in itself. I've got some guests here at the Hackerspace. But the roles or the work that is needed can change as it goes. So in a sense, this use case we're talking about here is more about allowing the file to be used in a new context, where it's an open source meetup community instead of a project. But the requirements that you find in Appendix 1 could apply, quite a few of them could apply to the meetup community too, and those could definitely change. For example, I want somebody to organize a technical event. I think that's actually one of the points there somewhere. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It's one of these unfortunate realities where a commercial entity has a trademark for the name Meetup in the context of organizing social events,
Yeah,
which is
that's a good
bloody
point.
freaking stupid. But what I would do to work around there is, so in English you can simply just put a hyphen between the two words. So if you do meet dash, there you go. So it is very, very clear that we are referring to the activity and not the company.
Sorry, were you saying that there's actually like a company that's basically trademarked for a word like meetup?
Yeah, meetup.
Yeah, which is not uncommon, right? I mean, you've got companies like Apple that trademarks, the word Apple, but in the context of Apple, it's for, consumer devices, right? Or in some cases services. But Meetup is registered trademark of Meetup in the context of organizing social events, which is quite literally the definition of the word.
Right. Well, technically, under U14, do you even need to include the word meetup in that sentence, in that title? So
Well, I mean, you'd have to replace it with something else like
an
event
open
or
community.
gathering or something.
No, but you got that later in the sentence. So it would become an open source community needs help organizing events.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
but
Sure. I see. Yeah.
Isn't it useful to distinguish this from open source projects? Like, this is not a project community. It's a separate entity. It could be, and often is, a separate entity from the project itself and its community.
Well,
So here's my thing about that sentence though. You can't license a community, right? There is no open source license for community. So
Yeah.
well,
you
how
know,
about an open source community needs help? Sorry, an open source project needs help organizing community events.
Well, then that would be very clear for the open source project. But the use case here is that it's independent of the project. Like in the example, the Perl programming language is its own community. It has a mailing list and a governing structure and its own repository. But since it is a programming language, it enables the creation of literally thousands of smaller communities. And separate to these thousands of projects and their communities, you have also communities that are just in the business of organizing events. So we can learn of the different modules out there and communities and the thousands of projects.
Right.
And it's that last type of the event organizing community, which I'm thinking of when I'm talking about here. That's why I call it a meetup community. But if we can't use meetup, then what word do we use to make it clear?
well,
that
you can use meet-up, and we can probably simply drop the source. So an open community. You're not talking about the project. You're not talking about open source. You're talking about an open community.
open source related? Does that help? Or does it just add confusion? A meetup community. All right.
All right, I got to drop for another call,
Yeah.
but this
It's been great.
was useful.
I'll finish
Yeah,
this up. I hope this was also useful for you, Simon. And feel free to drop by next time too.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I'll add it to my calendar. It's after my end of my work hours, so I never feel guilty about like stealing Fujitsu's time.
That's good. All right. Thank you for the session.
Okay,
All right. Cheers,
All right.
everyone.
right.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.